Lochoya sampo pagyo trashi pa tuche tempe chinle yarngoda belge drolor zambe ze parache palde lame shabla solvade Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Muni Shasane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Muni Shasane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Muni Shasane Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Muni Shasane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Muni Shasane Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Muni Shasane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Muni Shasane Karma Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Om Guru Vajradhara Sumati Muni Shas Uta Vardanya Shri Bhadra Varsa Manya Sarva Siddhi Hum Dagi Jitsun Lama Tuje Che Nyamda Dala Tuje Siksu So Gebe Shesan Dala Tendo So Uyon Sunge Nawa Tsedo So Tseji Ningne Solwa Debe Tse Dechen Korlo Viso Lekshune Yila Sambe Dede Malupa Gemel Hunge Drubra Chingelo Tsonyi Sodan Diktun Shape Tse Dunge Namke Yinso Lekshune Labchen Tsonyi Yonso Tsoba Dan Chera Nyetun Changwa Chancho Parge Nyinsen Tukun Tu Nyu Peme Siudru Lekshune Chancho Drube Gegen Kunshi Shi Tungen Dela Drubra Jingelo Dagi Lona Chela Chokpa Dan Chemin Samjur Ngemba Shiwa Dan Chedan Tumbe Dudun Malupa Beme Lungi Drubra Jingelo Dorna Tingne Tsirava Tamchedan Techi Pardune Kava Tamchetu Rese Kyamne Lama Kele Me Tukche Chingi Dala Siksu Sol Gongyab Drewe Nyamda Dachala Jetsun Lame Tuje Rabgongne Kudan Sunge Nawa Drame Tu Nyamsunyongwe Kesan Tobrasho Kewa Kundu Yanda Lama Dan Rame Chiki Pela Longchechi Sadan Lam Giyente Dorje Change Kopa Nyurtob Shoya Pakyuke Kudan Dagi Alu Pakyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Pakyuke Tudan Dagi Tenyerme Chiktu Chingi Aloya Makyuke Kudan Dagi Alu Makyuke Sundan Dagi Nga Makyuke Tudan Dagi Tenyerme Chiktu Chingi Alu Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha Om Shakyamuni Swaha Om Muni Muni Mahamuni Shakyamuni Swaha. Sashipeki Choshiameto Tamare Rabalingashi Nindegempadi Sange Shinto Mikte Ulowarki Drokuna Namanda Shingla Chopar Shoyedam Guru Ratna Mandrala Kam Niryatayami Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam Lai Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Chi Dagi Chushe Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Druparashu Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam Lai Chancho Pardo Dani Kyapso Chi Dagi Chushe Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Druparashu Sangye Chedan Tsoge Chonam La Chancho Pardo Dani Kyap Dagi Chushe Gibe Sonam Ki Drola Pinchra Sangye Druparashu.
In the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment. With the practice of generosity and the other perfections, may I obtain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Drawa Kunge Ranam Chitsampa Tamche Ketu Dagi Chutento.
Good morning. Often, we've spoken about two different possible approaches in our lives. One is more common somehow, where we live our lives somehow to survive, where we let the days go by, we try to avoid the bad situations, and we try to obtain pleasure. Somehow we try to survive comfortably, as pleasurably as possible, and our life's objective Our life's objective is life itself, living it. And this is what happens often, very often, where we live every aspect, not every aspect, but many aspects of our daily lives as if we were a result of the world around us. And we don't have the reins in our hands in living like this. We are ourselves like the result. We live as if we are the result of this society and this and in the context that we're living, or a little bit that we can say somehow a victim of the world. In any way, this is also, it's said that we're living to survive. We're a little bit more, a little bit more complex. It's not more complex than a cow. A cow tries to avoid suffering and obtain pleasures, does its best to survive. And we, maybe in a more sophisticated and complex way, we do the same. So this is one possibility. Another possibility instead is where we live our lives not as an end in itself, but where the life is a tool, is a means. Every moment, every experience, every encounter, life is what is happening through our thoughts, our emotions, our senses. This is our life. And so this other way is living our life where every moment and every experience is lived as an opportunity to grow as beings, to be a positive interdependence in the world and this reality in which we live in. It's where life is a means, it's a tool, and not an end in itself. My life and the life of each person can be lived as a means to sustain and support the planet, society, or as a tool to grow personally as people, so that we can then help others and help our society. But this second way means that we have an objective in our lives that goes beyond just this lifetime. It transcends it. Is that clear? If we simply want to live comfortably, so we take a walk in the woods. We watch a movie. Even tonight we're gonna project a movie. We try to avoid all momentary sufferings, and when there are things that upset us, maybe we smoke something, we drink something to forget about it, to forget about what we're thinking, and we just push life ahead. In Brazil, we say we push life with our belly, and then another day goes by, and another day's gone, and we try somehow to entertain ourselves in the meantime. Otherwise, life is just too boring. We start to really pass time and to entertain ourselves, and we entertain ourselves generally with two things: problems and pleasures. Because it seems strange, but we entertain ourselves tremendously with problems. I mean, how much space do we give to talking about conflicts and problems and seeing this and that? I mean, our mind is really entertained by this. This space is taken up by it, and then also with pleasures. If I want to use life for something bigger than life itself, without taking anything away from life, but I want to use this lifetime, we make it significative, make it meaningful. I make it meaningful once life ends. When I get to the end of life, I can look back and I can say, I have used this lifetime well. At the minimum, I died a better person than I was when I was born, and that's not obvious, and it's not a little bit. It's not a small task. I've been able to gain more stability, get rid of bad habits. I've been able to become a positive interdependence in the world I live in. I've lived life in peace and harmoniously, and I've brought peace and harmony to others, to those I shared this life with. And today I die a more compassionate, a more balanced, a more peaceful person than I was years ago. So let's leave death aside. Let's just think about our lifetime. You know, we take a trip, for example, somewhere, a new experience. When that trip is over, I mean, it depends how we live it. I mean, we can live the trip, and the goal of the trip is to enjoy the trip. Or we can live the trip also as a tool, and when the trip is over, I can ask myself, has this trip been meaningful? Have I learned anything? Have I grown? Have I brought something beautiful to the people that I met or to the places that I visited? This positive interdependence or not? Or, you know, I just enjoyed it, but you know, maybe I did a lot of damage to the people I met and the places I visited, and then in the end I just gathered up more resentment and sadness, and so in that sense it wouldn't be meaningful. We have a lot to see in these 2 days, so I don't want to elaborate too much here in this introduction, but I think this division is really quite clear. I mean, if we want to live life comfortably, the spiritual practices, you know, they can also be useful, because something that we do often, and it's not something negative, but it minimizes its effect. It's, you know, we have this spiritual entertainment, you know, which is fine. I mean, better to entertain myself with something positive and virtuous than with something violent and who knows what else. So it's not that spiritual entertainment is negative, but we're using something that has a deep, something very powerful we're using it for a more superficial need, which is just, you know, spending time, letting time go by comfortably and pleasurably. Instead, if we say no, what I really, really want is to live my life meaningfully. I want to be support for others. I want to be able to use every moment in a virtuous way. I want to grow as a person. At that point, there are some things we need to do. It's not enough just to want it. We need to act. And these actions, there are certain things that are very important, and often it's said that we should repeat them every day. So one is the 7 limbs. There's 7 practices, 7 attitudes, actions that we should have daily along this path that we call the path of Dharma, to follow what Buddha transmitted towards enlightenment. The first is cultivating humbleness and making praise. Praising means I recognize something that has more qualities than me. I connect with something that is the best version of myself, the person I want to be. So formally, it's called, it's said we make prostrations in the 7 limbs, but But it's not just a physical act to prostrate. There's an inner gesture, which is praising as this attitude of respect and humbleness. And at the same time, when I praise Buddha, I'm praising my own potential of enlightenment. I praise Buddha and my guru, he or she who can guide me to develop my own qualities, to become like him or her. It's this act of humbleness in the sense I recognize that I need to grow, I need to learn, but at the same time there's also a recognition of my own potential and my own qualities. Because the word prostration is chaksel in Tibetan. Chak means hands, literally means hands, depends on the context. But the Tibetan language is very particular. And in Sanskrit, I don't know, but in Tibetan, the same word can be translated in very different ways. So chak, it's the same exact word, can mean hands, hand, singular or plural, and it can also mean seal. Chagya. It depends on how you're going to use the word. So tsel, which is the second part of the translation of prostration, it can be translated as request. So it can be a request with the hands. I put my hands together as a request, or I ask for the seal. The seal, chagya chenpo. Seal means something that is indivisible. It's the union. It's the indivisible union of method and wisdom, enlightenment. So tomorrow when we talk about Vajrasattva, I'll go more into detail, but I don't want to open up this topic now. But when I prostrate, when we put our hands together in this gesture, the right hand represents the method. Method and is compassion, it's love. And the left hand represents wisdom. This is a vision that is coherent, is consistent with reality. Is the feminine energy, independently of man or woman. When we put them together, we remember that this path is made up of the union of wisdom, of method and wisdom, masculine and feminine energy united. Other words we could use is the union. It's the union between what we can call the more. It's the middle way. The union between the more intuitive part and the more rational part. Well, entering more in details, since we're here, when we put our hands together in this gesture, it seems like the easiest. It's just a simple salutation, and in Tibetan Buddhism, we actually do it with our thumbs inside, that actually touch at the base of the ring finger, and this represents. There's an energetic aspect to it, because at the base of the ring finger, there's a meridian that goes straight to the heart. That's very important. This is an energy channel, so we stimulate it by touching here, but at the same time, it also represents reminding us about the subtle winds that absorb into the central channel and to the heart. In just a few words, it reminds us, it represents our own mind in a very subtle state. I'm simplifying a lot, but it's a positive interdependence to help us reach states of consciousness that are deeper. So when we put when we put our thumbs at the base of our ring fingers, it represents also this. When I put my thumbs together, so we have method and wisdom, and the thumb at the base of the ring finger, it represents that it's not just on a gross level, a coarse level, but on a very subtle level. Method, it also represents joy, the so-called bliss. And wisdom is emptiness, the correct view of reality. So every time when we put our hands together, there's an extremely deep meaning. It's not just, we just put our hands together in the mudra of the prayer. It has a very important meaning. It's also said that when putting the hands together, so, and often we do that in the practice of self-healing, where we put our hands together, or when we make prostrations, or when we just put our hands together, even on a non-conceptual level, non-mental level, it helps generate equilibrium, balance. This is something, once talking, I heard a couple explanations about this, studies in psychology, for example, where you can see that the right and the left sides of the brains, and the left and the right sides of the bodies, when they come together, it brings more balance. But now I'm not going to go into this. But it just means that even physically, by putting our hands together to the center, it generates wellness, even on a physically. And I believe that it's like this. It's not so important. But right now, the point is that the first of the seven. This weekend we're only going to talk about one of the seven, but I want to give you the context of this. So the first one is making praise and making prostrations, and it's not about just worshipping a Buddha, worshipping our guru. No, it represents two fundamental aspects: one's own potential and my present state. So I make praise because I recognize that I need help. As I am now, I can't make it by myself because I'm made up of habits. And if there's not someone that guides me, that shows me, I'm going to just keep repeating these habits. Once I read something like 99% of our thoughts are repetitions of previous thoughts. And what happens if we don't get into contact with others, our tendency is just to repeat what we already know, the habits that we already have. So when someone comes into contact with us, or we come into contact with someone else, when there's this interaction and the other helps us through that interaction to open up our mind, to what before we didn't know. And if we don't have this, we're going to just stay in this loop, basically. So I recognize where I am, and at the same time I recognize my potential to where I can get. All of this is within this prostration. So I make praise, remembering that humbleness is one of the most beautiful qualities that exists, is extremely important along the path, and for there to be humility, humbleness, the basis, one needs to not compare oneself to someone else. Arrogance, the opposite of humbleness, comes from comparing to others and feeling superior. Remember that when one feels superior to some, inevitably he will feel inferior to others. And anyone who feels inferior to some, as soon as there's an opportunity, will feel superior to others. So we need to go beyond this. And so we do that. We shouldn't compare ourselves to others. I recognize my I recognize my potential, and I see where I am. At the same time, I connect myself with who can help me, who can guide me along this path, and I make make praise. And the second of the 7 limbs is about making offerings. When we make offerings, they can be visualized mentally or exposed, like physically displayed, like these water bowls here on the altar. It can be food and music and incense. It can be one's own inner experiences. It's where we materialize mentally and also physically, the feelings that we have. It's a little bit like if we love someone a lot, and it's his or her birthday, and there's another person. Maybe we need to give a present just as a formality. I mean, so the presents we get, are they going to be the same, or is there going to be a difference? Because when we love someone and we give someone a gift, we try to find a gift that can materialize or represent the feelings that we have. Is that clear? So it's crazy because it's impossible to materialize a feeling like gratitude, love, or respect, but somehow we try to materialize it. And this reminds me, this is many, many years ago, I was in India, and there was a couple of friends, and he was Tibetan and she was Italian, and she would complain that he didn't give her any jewelry. And he would say, "I've already given you my body, speech, and mind. What more can I give you?" And so and jokingly I say, "You can give her 3 diamonds, one that represents your body, one that represents your speech, and one that represents your mind." So the point is that when we materialize something, we are reinforcing a feeling that we have. So matter has its importance when connected to our feelings. So from our side, this act of offering means that we're materializing gratitude, materializing respect, love, etc. And a fundamental point of making offerings is because, first of all, it's important for the one who makes the offerings, not the one who receives them. Often we have a wrong perception, as if it were some kind of exchange. I'm going to make more offerings to you because I'm in a difficult situation, and so you can help me more. I'm giving you this, and so now you can give me that. No, we're not here doing business. Making offerings are important for those who make the offerings. And when I make an offering, what I'm doing is I'm manifesting in material, in matter, because I live in this world of material things, and I am matter myself. And then I'm materializing my feelings of gratitude and love and respect that I want to increase. And at the same time, along our spiritual path, if our objective is to better our inner qualities, like stability and love and wisdom, etc., and lessen our sufferings and our mental defilements, a fundamental thing for this is translated as merit, and we're going to talk more about that because it has a lot to do with the acts of purification, so generating positive causes. And one of the best ways to generate positive causes, to generate positive energy merits, is by offering, is sharing through generosity. So along the path, we offer first prostrations and making praise, and then we make offerings as a tool to create the foundation, as an energetic cause to support inner virtuous states of mind. And then we're going to talk more about this. But we make offerings for two reasons: to cultivate feelings like gratitude and love and respect and trust, and also to accumulate merit, positive karma, positive energy. There's no word that exists. It's sonam in Tibetan and punya in Sanskrit, but in English and Italian, there's no real good translation. And so first we make prostrations, and the second of the 7 limbs is to make offerings. After that, then we purify. So prostrations, offerings, purification. There's the third. The fourth of the 7 limbs is rejoicing. The fifth is asking. The fifth and the sixth, they can also be in different order. I've seen this order being inverted. The fifth is asking for teachings, and the sixth is asking to stay here with us, and the 7th is the dedications. So we have prostrations, offerings, purification, rejoicing, asking for the teachings, asking the permanence, like for staying, and then dedications. Who are we asking? Whom are we asking? The 7 limbs is towards he who guides us along the path, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, our guru. So we make praise here in front of Guru Buddha. We make prostrations, we make offerings, we purify our negativities, we rejoice for the qualities and the virtue, and we ask to be guided with the Dharma, and we ask that our guide stays with us as long as necessary, and then we dedicate what has been generated positively for the benefit of all. So I don't want to go into details of the other points. I didn't want to make a long introduction today, but here we are. So, but that third point is purification. So it's not just found in the 7 limbs. Even in the Lojong teachings, just a short time ago, we saw the first 5 of the 7-point mind training, and then we'll finish that teaching soon. And inside there, it says, Jorwa Shiwa Tapji Shok. It says, so the excellent method should be accompanied by the 4 actions, and the first 2 are purification and accumulation of merit. There's also making offerings of torma and trusting to a Dharmapala. These were the 4 actions, but that first one was purification. So let's try to understand what it means to purify. And before we get into the practices of purification, and even and I know that many of you would like the ceremony of purification, and that you all enjoy, where we use water, or we wear white and then wear black, and then we tie people up, and there's fire and there's smoke. I mean, there's so many elaborate purification practices. But once I asked Lama Ganchen, not me, actually, I was present, but Rinpoche was asked to do one of these purification practices, ceremonies in Milan at the Kumpen Lama Ganchen, and answered, okay, I'll do it. And then at a certain point he said, I'll do it. I've done it so many times. But when I came to the West, after a while, what I want to leave you is not to heal you, but to give you the tools so you can heal yourselves. doing practices or ceremonies like purification practices where one is passive, energetically help, and can be useful in some cases, but we really should learn to have the tools to do it for ourselves. And what happens is that to be able to purify well, for these practices to work, we need to have an inner fundamental attitude. And we have a small problem here. We're not Tibetan. Well, that's not a problem. But we grew up in a cultural context, a religious context, a paradigm, a worldview, and we speak a language that is very different than the context in which these teachings were originally given. So sometimes I see we do purification practices with an attitude that is not it's not the attitude that one should have for doing these kinds of practices. So I'd like to first share with you the foundation to be able to do purification practices, and then the practices themselves, the visualizations, the recitations, etc. They are relatively easy, but there's a basis of knowledge and mental state that needs to be generated, and it's really important. So I wanted to structure today like this. We need, first of all, to see what purify means, what are we purifying, why we need to purify, and how we can purify. And what does it mean to purify? So let's start from the beginning. What? Purify what? In Tibetan, we say dikpa and diktrip. Dikpa and dikpa. So we have a problem because there's no translation. In the sense, there are two words that I'm not able to translate. So let me just explain them. Dikpa, in some cases, is translated as a sin. It's been translated, or in more modern times, it's translated as a negative action or negative karma. Dikpa. And dikpa instead is translated as obstacle or obstruction. Let's try to understand what we mean. What we need to purify mostly are the causes of our suffering. This is what we want to purify. Because, to purify means to clean, to take away, to eliminate something that's there. So what is it that we want to eliminate? That which generates suffering, right? So when we talk about purifying, we're talking about eliminating, taking away, cleaning the causes of our own suffering. What are the causes of suffering according to what Buddha taught? Karma and mental defilements. Dikpa, these are the actions. Jipa are emotions. The conditionings are habits. So if we really look at why we suffer, we'll see that at the basis of our suffering, there are our actions, our interactions that don't end there, but actually generate results that add together, with our negative emotions, arrogance, anger, jealousy, attachment, selfishness, ignorance, etc. So, what do we need to purify? Karma, negative, any karma that generates suffering, because it's a cause of suffering, and the emotions, these habits, these conditionings, because emotion is a word, it is kind of a new term. In Tibetan, there is no word for emotion. Also in the Western context, it seems quite new. But in our times is very, very much used. So I'm not going to just limit it to one term. It's their habits, our conditionings, our emotions that generate suffering. So this is what we want to purify. So let's start with the first. Actions. To understand this a little bit, we need to introduce karma. How can I purify something? First of all, I need to interact. I can't purify something that doesn't exist, so it's not there. It's as if I came to you and said, you need to clean that thing. But if I need to clean a place, clean an object, first of all, I need to be able to come into contact with that object. I can't clean something that's not there. It's as if I said, yesterday you dirtied, but you dirtied and today you need to clean. But if it's not there anymore, then how can I do it? If I'm going to clean it today, I need to come into contact with that is there today, not with what was yesterday. So when we talk about karma, it's very important to make a distinction between two aspects. That there's the part of action and the force, the strength of the action, legye nupa in Tibetan, or karmic force, this karmic imprint, it's a kind of inertia. Because when I act, once I've finished that action is no longer there. How can I purify a karma if that karma is already done? I mean, karma literally means action. So I did something. I said something stupid. I acted with arrogance or violence towards someone. I had a thought of hate towards someone. I did something that's not right. But the action's done. It's finished. It's past. How can I purify something that doesn't exist anymore? What is there instead is that imprint of that action. It's a kind of karmic inertia. It's if I throw something, that act of throwing the object is concluded, but that strength that keeps that object moving is still there. So when we talk about karma literally means action. But mostly we're making reference to when we talk about there's the karma in the present moment, it means it's like what I am doing, it's that action. And when we talk about karma of something that has already happened, we're making reference to the inertia of that movement, that karmic force, we call it. So every time we do something, that action doesn't end in itself. That action generates a kind of strength, like a kind of inertia of movement. Just think about today, in this present moment. I mean, we're still influenced by choices that we made even in our adolescence, experiences and choices. You know, are we still maybe influenced by experiences and choices that happened in our childhood, or this morning or yesterday? It's true, no? When we do something, the actions don't end there. Every action that we do, and when I say action, I mean physical interactions, verbal and mental. So thoughts and feelings, the words we say, and the physical interactions, they never end just there, but they generate a kind of force and energy and inertia that we bring along with us. And at a certain given point in time, we generate another action that is going to interact with that previous one, and boom, we experience the result. The result shows up in our feelings, our sensations, karma. The result is a result of our actions, comes out in the way we experience reality. The example that we can give is I throw this object, and as I throw it, that's the action. Throwing it is the action. Once I've finished the action of throwing it, but it keeps going. That's the inertia, it's the karmic force. And at a certain point, what happens? The object comes into contact with somebody's head. So the person who's there in that moment is the condition, and comes into contact with the karmic force of that previous action, and boom, we have a result. Imagine that the difference that we have is that if I throw this object here now, because of other forces, sooner or later, that object is going to fall. Because what are the forces that interact with throwing this object? There's gravity. We have the actual atmosphere. If I threw this object in space, for example, theoretically, what they've taught us is that, what would happen? It would just keep going. It depends where I throw it. If I throw it, somewhere, closer, where there's still gravity, the force of gravity, it would keep turning. But if it were outside the force of gravity, I don't know where it would go. But if there's an opposing force, if there's no opposing force, it would just keep going until it met some opposing force that would stop it. I don't know if this is clear. So if I generate an energy, a strength, a force, it's going to keep going, until it comes into contact with an opposite force that is going to transform it into something else. It can be an opposing force that just stops it, or it runs into something. But let's imagine I throw this into space, and at a certain point, I throw it, and then I just forget about it, and then one day it just hits me in the back of the head, and I say, "Oh, and I blame someone." This is the karmic example. We throw something and we forget about it. But that karmic force keeps going until one day I do another action, and I find this condition that's going to interact with that previous action, and I experience a result. So, when we talk about karma, we need to it needs to be clear that cause and condition are different. Remember that all causes are also conditions and also results. In other words, this present moment is the result of the past. It's the condition for the present, and it's also the cause of the future. So what I do now, at the same time, I'm living a result of something I did before. I'm creating a condition for immediate future that I'm going to live, which is our present moment. This is immediate future. And we're also creating causes that I'm going to live in a faraway future. I don't know if that difference is clear. So in this present moment, with our thoughts and our actions, interactions, etc., it has these three functions, these three characteristics more than functions. In this present moment, the past and the results of the past manifest. So we live the results of the past in this present moment. We create conditions to ripen causes that we created in the past, and we create new causes for what we will experience in a far or not so far future. So the actions that we've done, I mean, the stones we've thrown, the seeds we've planted, the seeds are planted, the stones have been thrown. What we have said, the things we have done, they're done. It's finished, right? But you know, something has remained of all that. It hasn't there? Yeah. Yes. Because what happens is, you know, I do an action, the action is finished, but there's some kind of strength. There's an influence that continues. This is called the karmic force. And from another point of view, even on an emotional point of view, on many other levels, we keep living the results. We keep living the results of actions that have finished. And it's what has remained of past actions that needs to be purified. But is to be purified. So when we talk about purifying negativities, purifying negative karma, we mean I've thrown the stick, the stone. I've done it. But how can I generate an opposing force to stop that karma before it ends up, hitting someone's head? Because if I throw the stone and it comes all the way around, there's a complete turn and hits me in the head. So my head stops that action, and it's so that result has ripened, but but this is extinguishing a cause. This is not purifying. You are experiencing the results of your past karma, and you experienced it through suffering. So if I have a bad habit, like a bad habit of eating, and I get sick, and then I experience my sickness, so the causes are ripening in the form of a sickness. So just using a metaphor, one thing is having a debt. Maybe I take out a loan and I have a debt and I need to pay back that debt. But there's a difference between paying the debt or getting some kind of amnesty where I can eliminate my debt without actually having to pay it. Is that is some kind of clemency. So purifying means eliminating a debt without actually having to pay. Paying the debt is not purifying it. That's extinguishing your debt. That's extinguishing the causes, and that's not purifying. So if I do a non-virtuous action, a negative action, like I throw a stone, the purification is when I'm able to stop that strength of the stone that is just moving forward before it creates any damage. That's purifying. When the stone comes into contact with my own head, I'm extinguishing that force But that's not purifying. That's extinguishing negative karma by experiencing the result. Is that difference clear between the two? So every time, I mean, how do the results manifest? Is through sensation. So theoretically, every time, which is always, every time we feel something, we have a sensation of suffering, we are extinguishing a negative karmic force that we generated in our past. Every time we experience a pleasurable sensation, we are using up a positive energy that we created in the past. So someone would say, well, better to suffer then. No. Why? Mostly because, I mean, the problem that we have is that when I throw a stone and it comes back to me and hits me, what do I say? Oh, that's painful. Oh, but thank goodness, because now I've taken off the burden of my past actions. No, we pick up 3 more stones and throw them. Normally, when we live situations with suffering, what's our reaction? Peace, love, harmony, equanimity, altruism? Or do we react with aversion, hate, anger, and violence? It's more that one. So we live in this vicious cycle. That's why what we should purify is both dikpa, this negative karmic force, and also the dikpa, which are our mental defilements, our negative imprints, our habits. Both need to be purified. So, how many negative karmic forces do we have with ourselves? In other words, have you ever done anything stupid in the past? Has it ever happened to react with anger? Has it ever happened that you reacted physically, verbally, mentally, with jealousy, envy, hate? It happens, doesn't it? I mean, has it happened? Well, once I was Geshe Tupten Rinpoche, one of my teachers said, to understand what you've done in your past lives, it's enough to look at what you've done in this past week and this past year, and then multiply it by infinity. There's an interesting characteristic of karma, which that does not allow for ignorance, like the law. In the sense, if I do something stupid, but then I forget about it, I'm still keeping that karmic force with me. It's like in the law. Or credit cards is a great example to understand karma. If I buy something with a credit card, and at a certain point I forget what I bought, but then I get the bill at the end of the month, the fact that I forgot about what I bought, does that mean I don't have to pay for it? No. What's the main difference between how karma works and how credit cards work? The credit card is much better because you know when you have to pay, and when you get your bill, it gives you a list of what you bought. It says, okay, so at the end of the month, I buy it now. At the end of the month, I'll have to buy that. And when you get the bill, you have all the description of what you have bought. I don't know if it's ever happened that you've gotten a bill and you see something and you don't remember having purchased it. And what's that feeling? The feeling is, oh, I forgot, or I must have forgotten, or no, they're trying to cheat me. This feeling of of being cheated, of injustice. This happened to me when I got my car insurance, which was more expensive. And then they said, because you've had an accident, your car insurance is more expensive. I thought, an accident? I didn't have an accident. That's not true. And I talked to the nice lady Mara from insurance, and she said, yeah, no, you had an accident. I said, no. And I thought, oh, they're cheating me. No, there was an accident. And then I thought, oh, I lent my car to someone. They had an accident and they didn't even tell me about it. That's strange. And I said, please send me the declaration, that we filled out during the, send me a copy of this. And so then I see my signature. I said, they even forged my signature. How did they dare do this? And there was this feeling of injustice. And then I start reading the description, and as I'm reading, little by little, the little pieces of the story come together until I remembered. It was evening here, right in. I had the car parked right here in front of the this parking space in front of the center, and I needed to leave early the next day, and that night there was a lot of fog, and there was no one next to me. But in the morning, when I drove away, I didn't see that there was another car, and I bumped into a car. But I needed to leave very quickly, so I called someone from the center. So there, unfortunately, there will be someone at the center who's going to see their car scratched. But I had totally forgotten about the whole story, so I just signed. And when I saw that the result arrived, for something that I didn't remember, there's this really strong feeling of injustice. Something's happening to me. I need to pay for something that I don't remember doing. With karma, it's more or less like this. Imagine what it would be like to have a credit card where the bills arrive without any kind of description and with just various times, Maybe you buy something today and you have to pay in 50 years or in 2 days. And when you have to pay, maybe in these days you spent 10 euros and then you need to, and the bill comes and you need to pay 50,000. Because in all those past years, somewhere you bought something. But when that bill comes, you need to know that you did buy something, But you cannot experience anything for which you have not created the causes. So that's a law of karma. Because if you get the bill, it means that somewhere you bought that thing. But in our own ignorance, Buddha describes that we have 2 types of ignorance. One type is this ignorance of not seeing the causes when we experience the results and not understanding. So I get the bill and I don't know where it came from. And then we also have the ignorance of, what's important for us is to diminish the forces that we've generated in the past. Not to eliminate suffering in itself also, but mostly because in our habits, we end up reacting with other non-virtuous actions in front of a negative result, a result of suffering. So to try to stop this vicious cycle, it's as if we continuously, we just keep making more debts to pay the previous one. So we need to, this is what we need to try to avoid. When we talk about purifying karma, it's not that we're purifying the action, but the actual force that was generated through doing that action. Now, karma in general has 4 characteristics. The certainty of karma, which means the first is the certainty of karma. The result is consistent with the cause. If I plant the seed of a lemon tree, I will not pick, oranges. So there's this coherence. And it's quite complex if we go into the details. Because what are the actions? What's the definition of a negative action or a negative karma? It's a definition that philosophically works, but it doesn't mean much to us. So the definition is all actions that when they manifest in a feeling of suffering. So this is the definition of negative karma. So on a philosophical level, that's fine. So negative karma is actions that when the result ripens, they manifest as suffering. And positive would be actions that when the result manifests, they come out as pleasurable feelings. And neutral karmas, they show up as neutral sensations, feelings. So this is clear, but given that I'm ignorant and I don't know what are the results in the moment of the actions, how can I discern that this action is positive or not if I don't know what those results are going to be? So the greatest tool that we have is not at 100%, but it's very powerful. Is our own sincerity in observing our own motivation that's behind an action. This is the most important part of an action, like why we do it. What are the emotions that generate positive and virtuous emotions, and which ones are the negative ones? It's all here. Is also it's not black and white. There are a couple shades of gray. It's very karma is very complex, but let's try to simplify a little bit. One of the best ways to see if an action is positive or negative is observing our own body. If the body is relaxed, if the mind is relaxed, in harmony, then probably it's a positive action. If it generates tension, it's negative. Have you ever been relaxed while you're feeling angry? When you get angry, when you feel hate or jealousy or envy, attachment too. What's the physical or mental state? Are you tense or are you relaxed? In my experience, there's tension. I don't know anyone who relaxes when they get angry. And this is one of the best ways, because we can also get into, Buddha described the 51 mental factors, and there's 6 root negative factors, the 20 to a secondary negative factors, and their virtuous states of mind. There are these descriptions, but in a more subjective way for ourselves. We can observe ourselves and understand if our motivation is positive or not. In other words, when we do something where at the basis there's this obsession with self-gratification, when at the base of that action there's a thought or an intention that has to do that focus on the I and the mind and excludes the happiness or the suffering of others, then normally this generates a non-virtuous. This is a non-virtuous action. Virtuous actions, positive actions, normally are based on feelings of love and gratitude, respect, generosity, feelings that generate well-being and this is just like generally speaking. So feelings that at the moment we call them positive, feelings, actions based on respect and altruism and with humbleness, etc. These are virtuous. These are virtuous actions. They generate positive feelings, and the opposite is true too. So why do we make a difference between positive and negative actions? It's not the war between good and evil, but we have two types of feelings: attraction and aversion. And what generates, what generates suffering is negative. What generates pleasure is positive. I mean, we're naturally attracted to what brings us pleasure and have aversion to what brings us suffer. So here we're not talking about good and bad. We're talking about our own human experience and nature, the own human experience, and also any sentient the experience of any sentient being. So from the sensation, based on the type of the result of this and the sensation, that we have these two types of actions. So there is coherence between the action and the result. The second characteristics I'll explain for the last, and so the third characteristics of karma is where you cannot you can't have an experience without having created the cause. If I experience something, there's nothing that I experience that I myself did not create the cause for. So that no one can make someone experience something if that person didn't create the causes themselves. Of course, this doesn't take away our responsibilities. It's not like I slap you in the face, say, oh, that hurts. Oh, that's your own karma. You wanted it. No. In a certain sense, yes. I could say, I'm even doing you a favor because now you're extinguishing your negative karma. I've seen this kind of thing said and done. It doesn't work like that. In reality, once I act with violence, I'm generate a non-virtuous action. On my side, I'm creating a vicious cycle, and that cannot be justified. When I experience a negative result, I need to be aware that who interacted with me negatively is a condition through which I experienced a negative result based on something negative that I created in the past. So conditions are of two types. There are inner or one's own conditions, and there are external conditions or conditions of others. The inner conditions are, this is our body, our thoughts, our actions in the present moment. In this present moment, my emotions, my thoughts, my actions, my physical state of being, etc., is a condition through which I'm going to experience the causes that I experienced in the past. Instead, in this present moment, the actions of other people, their thoughts, my surroundings, etc., everything that's around me is an external condition through which I will also interact, and that interaction will ripen a past karma. So we are influenced, but I experience the result of my own results and no one else's. I've heard people say strange things. Oh, because I'm experiencing your negative karma. This is not possible. If it were possible, life would be much easier, because there are beings with great wisdom and compassion, and the Buddhas would purify our negative karma and take on our negative karma. So the practices of purification would be just requesting Buddha to take away our negative karma. That would be easy, but that's not possible. So karma is individual, even though we do have this idea of collective karma. Collective karma, there can be of two types. People, just beings in general, who have created a similar action, and they find themselves in a shared condition. So let's say we're in the same place. So this external condition is similar, and we created, each one, have created similar causes. So at that point, you can experience the results at the same time, and it's the shared condition that makes it collective, not the cause, the individual cause. But if we act, for example, all in the similar way, this then can bring this collective karma where we experience a similar result. But so even if we call it a collective karma, remember that it's individual. So I can't experience anything that I didn't create the causes for. And if I experience anything, it's because somewhere I created those causes. Is that clear? That's the third aspect of karma. The fourth is what the actions that we create, that karmic force that is created, sooner or later, it is going to manifest. It doesn't have an expiration date. So it's like throwing the stick in space. It just keeps going until it doesn't come into contact with something. So that fourth aspect is, no matter what action we do, sooner or later we are going to experience its results, except if we are able to interact and eliminate that force. I've thrown the stick, for example. It's flying about. If I'm able to generate an opposite force to stop it before it hits someone in the head, then I've stopped it. Otherwise, it's just going to go on and on until it meets something. So when we do something, that karmic force, that inertia, stays and stays until it manifests as a result that we experience, or an opposing force can eliminate it. Is that clear? So that the second aspect of karma instead is this karmic force, it grows, in the sense that if I do something, And I don't do anything to generate an opposing force. The tendency of that force is to grow, like, like a snowball, like something like a little ball of snow that's rolling down a mountain and gets bigger and bigger. So that's why it said a small negative action, if it's not opposed somehow, its tendency is to grow and grow, and the result will be greater than it was at the beginning. It's like, if I take an object and I drop it, the force of an object that after a couple hundred meters at the bottom has a different strength. This is a particular aspect, and there are some characteristics. There's some parts of karma that are important to understand how, so we can understand how to purify. So an action also needs to be, for an action to be complete, it needs to have four characteristics. Okay, there needs to be an intention. We need to do the action, we need to conclude the action, and we need to rejoice for having done the action. I want to lie. I want to show you reality. I have some kind of interest in showing you reality different from what it is. So I tell you a lie, you listen to it, you believe in what I say, and then I rejoice. So then if it has those four aspects, then it's a complete action. I want to kill, for example. I get close, I do it. Oh, and there's no more mosquito. I rejoice. So the action is complete. I want to kill. I go towards killing. I'm able to kill, and I rejoice for having killed. I want to help. I go to help. I'm able to help. Oh, how beautiful that I was able to help. So that makes a complete action. Very often we have actions that don't have these four aspects. We do things without meaning to do them. We do things, maybe we don't even finish them, or we do things that we don't rejoice. And in that case, the karmic force is less, but it's still there. I mean, karma is very, very complex. Even when you don't mean to do something and you don't have the intention of doing something, it still has karmic force. One example I've always given, let's say that I'm like at the 10th floor of a building and there's a room filled with children, and we're teaching the children how to bake chocolate cakes. And at a certain point, I realized that this electric oven that I have is starting to burn. I mean, I can see this toxic smoke is starting to come out, and I'm not able to open the door and get the children out, and I'm afraid of hurting the children who are with me. And the only way that I see to save the children who are with me is to open the window, grab the electric. I burn my hands, but I want to throw the window out the door, out the window. So my intention is to save the children. So my intention is good. I take the oven, I throw the oven out. They're out of danger. I've saved the children, so it's a positive action. And it's complete motivation, action, the completion of the action, and the rejoicing for having done the action. But at the same time, when I throw the oven out the window, it lands on someone's head and kills them. Did I have that intention to hurt someone? No. Did I throw to hurt someone? No. But the point is, I did hurt somebody. Do I rejoice for the action? Okay. No, and maybe I didn't even know that I did it. But does that take away my responsibility? This takes away, does this take away the interaction that I had with the other person? No. So there is anyway, there's still a part of karmic force is still generated, regardless of not even knowing about it, I'm still responsible for having killed that person. Clear that if I need to then be in court in front of a judge, there's a difference. There's difference between calculating the time of when that person was going to walk by, planning the killing of this person, and then an accident. I mean, there's a difference. Even according to the law, I imagine that there's a difference. But it's not because I wasn't aware that I'm not responsible. Lama Ganchen told me once that there was a monk who had gone to the United States as a Tibetan refugee, and he ended up in the United States. He found a job, and he didn't know what he did. He knew that his job was that when there was light, he needed to push some buttons. And he tells the story says that years later, after many, many years, and so many times he learned. He knew that he actually worked in a huge butcher shop, and then years later, he learned later that what he was actually doing was killing the chickens every time he would push that button. And so for 10 years he was there pushing these buttons, and so did he have this intention of killing those animals? No. But he was part of that interdependence. Yes, sure. So karma is very, very complex. It's not obvious at all. What's important is that it's possible to generate an opposite force, and first of all, we should be careful not to have complete actions, and don't use this to be sly. It's about being more aware. You don't say, okay, well, I'm going to do something negative, but then I'm not going to rejoice. So we have the characteristics of karma where for a karma to be complete, it needs these four aspects: this motivation, action, completion of the action, and rejoicing for the action. And unfortunately, it's easier to do a negative, a complete negative karma than it is to complete a positive action. Okay. Like, I want to help that person. I'm able to help that person. I did it. Oh, but the person didn't thank me, so I don't rejoice. For something, we need to rejoice to make that action complete. Another aspect of karma is that when we do an action and we keep that action hidden, there are two ways, that when we do an action, we can be aware of the action, and so it's not hidden to ourselves nor towards others. We're transparent with ourselves and with others with that action. I did this. I share with others the fact that I did this. I'm aware about that action. I'm not hiding that action. So it's said that when we hide an action instead, hide it from others, even from ourselves, the tendency is that force starts to grow. It gets bigger. So it's hidden actions, not openly admitted. They have tendency to increase. So if I do something positive and I go around telling people that I've done it, the tendency is that the tendency actually is that energy is not going to grow. If I do a negative action, and I tell everyone about it, then it's also not going to grow. If we keep it hidden, it's going to grow. You can see this also when we do something virtuous. When we do something virtuous and we tell other people about it, we're polluting it, because we're not repeating, we're not talking about it because, because then maybe we don't do actions, repeat that action with that same motivation, pure motivation, but now we do it because we want recognition from others. And instead, if we do something negative and we hide it, then we end up hiding it from ourselves as if we weren't doing it, because then it pushes us to keep doing it, and it keeps us in that vicious cycle. Another characteristic is when we regret, and not that we feel, when we regret and we openly admit that we have made a mistake. I mean, this is very important. Not as a feeling of guilt, because when we talk about karma, when we talk about purification, we should never feel guilty. We never talk about feeling guilty. We don't talk about feeling guilty. We don't talk about forgiveness. Forgiveness is another thing, but it doesn't have to do with purification. What we need is to openly admit, if I do something and I recognize that it was an error, that it would have been better not to do, it would have been better not to have done it. So I naturally generate an attitude of opposition. If I do a virtuous action and I say, oh, I shouldn't have done it, I made a mistake, I'm also opposing to that action. If I do a negative action and I recognize that I shouldn't have done it, I'm opposing that action. So regret, in the sense of recognizing that we shouldn't have done that action, that generates an opposing action, or an action that opposes the action that we did. To purify karma. Before this, why should we purify karma? First of all, because we don't want to suffer. Secondly, because when we get into vicious cycles, it's not easy to get out. In our life, when we have strong suffering, our tendency is to repeat the same causes that generated that suffering. And it's also for this reason that it's not enough to purify karma, the karmic force, but we need to also purify the habits and the imprints of the karma. And here there's a very important point, that once the purification, so we begin purifying by admitting that it was a mistake. Let's say that I have an attitude of criticizing others based on arrogance, which is based on a sense of insecurity or inferiority. So I have this tendency of highlighting the weak points of others. So I use decisive words or violent speech. I do this. So my motivation is not good. I generate a negative karmic force. But not just that. Every time I act with a certain emotion, a certain habit, and I act, each time I'm reinforcing that habit. Every time I say, no, I shouldn't have criticized. It's not good for me. And I admit openly with myself that it's not good for myself. It's not good for me or for others. This is the basis for purifying, but I'm also opposing that habit. And in this case, criticizing. There's lying, stealing, killing. I mean, different habits that we have, mental, physical, speech, killing, and not necessarily human beings. So it's important for us to understand that it's not enough simply to openly admit that we've done something wrong as a kind of like a request for forgiveness, call all the Buddhas, please forgive me for what I've done. No, that's not what it's about. The point is recognizing that action, it didn't go well, not with a sense of guilt, but with a sense of So this is in the practice of Vajrasattva. It says, through my ignorance and not knowing, I broke my commitments and I did non-virtuous actions. I recognize that I did things through my own ignorance, through my own envy, my own hate, jealousy, based on my own ignorance, and I openly admit it. I'm not blaming myself, pointing the finger at myself, but I'm redirecting myself. I'm recognizing and welcoming myself. I'm openly seeing what I'm doing, and I'm redirecting, because where there's a sense of guilt, where we blame ourselves and say, I was bad, there we have this idea, which is not what we have in Buddhism at all. So we have this idea that, okay, since I've been bad, I need to punish myself. I need to be punished. I need to do something to take away this blame. So by suffering, I'm going to take away the blame and the weight of this negative action. So, and this is where this idea of needing to suffer in order to purify. And if this were the case, then we would make malas, with nails inside, and we would just do sessions of purification where we just do the self-flagellation with nail, with the malas with nails. But remember, it's not through suffering that we purify. Purifying is a joyous process. It's a state of love towards oneself, not of punishment or of blame. It's very important to understand this. When we talk about purification, we never talk about like, how bad I am. No, it's about really loving ourselves. And when we talk about mantra, when we talk about, tomorrow we'll talk about we'll look at the practice of Vajrasattva. Instead, if you look at the mantra of Vajrasattva, it talks about recognizing our own pure nature and identifying with our pure nature and our own qualities, and loving ourselves more than saying, oh, look how bad you are, you need to be punished. No. So I recognize my ignorance, I recognize my jealousy, etc., and the stupid things that I've done. I mean, this is important too. Why is it important to recognize the stupid things that we do? First of all, so that we can try to not repeat them. To purify, there are 4 powers that are necessary. Have we understood more or less what we need to purify? I mean, we have this karmic force. Why do I want to purify the karmic force? Because I don't want to suffer. And when we have a negative karmic force that's very heavy, it's as if we didn't have the necessary causes to experience positive mental states. So, for example, if someone has very heavy negative karmic force, no matter how much effort one puts in, that person has trouble actually meditating, understanding things. It stays very conceptual. A few days ago, I was watching a video of Lama Michel in Brazil in 1986, and in these teachings, he was explaining the things that one does at the beginning of teachings, the meanings of the mudras. When we do this mudra at the beginning of teachings, this is the mudra of teaching the Dharma. It means now I'm going to teach you the Dharma, which means also I'm going to share this experience and adapting to others. And then we do the mandala offering. Why do we do the mandala offering? And here Rinpoche says, because before the teachings, we make a mandala offering to accumulate positive energy, because without that, you cannot put into practice the teachings. To be able to go from conceptual to realizing something, we need to create the causes, because as we said before, without the causes, there are no results. If I want a certain type of result, I need to create the causes. It's not enough just to understand. So, yeah, reflecting conceptually, understanding, analyzing. These are causes for the future, but also conditions. But to really experience an inner state, of the preciousness of this life, realize impermanence, to be able to go beyond one's own anger or jealousy, for example, that bring to states of being of great peace. They need causes. They need a foundation of great positive karmic force. Otherwise, we do have feelings of harmony, but how long does it last? Not that long. It's as if every once in a while, we can go fast and then it just slows down, But to keep going, we need gas in the tank. We need to be able to keep going, and these are sustained by virtuous actions. So along the spiritual path, we need to purify. We need to purify negativities, and we need to accumulate positive energy. And here I take advantage to tell you something that Gen Lakpala taught me. One day he explained to me that he said, when you experience a feeling of pleasure, remember that what you experience is the result of something positive that you've done in the past. You need enjoy it, enjoy your life, enjoy those in the experience. But together with those pleasurable moments, it's important to keep generating positive causes, and be careful that you don't just use up your positive karma without generating new positive karma. he was making reference also. It's like the like material use of things. Like if I go to buy something, you know, I'm using money. But if I buy something and through that condition, I feel pleasure. I'm using up money, but I'm also using up my positive karma. What if at a certain point I have the money, you know, what if I have the money, but then I don't have the positive inner karma? I can buy anything I want, but then I won't have that feeling of pleasure, which doesn't come from the object itself, but from what you have inside. But so one problem in our modern world today is because we have a lifestyle in these modern times where we have a very high use of serotonin. We're using up serotonin when we feel pleasures. We're using up serotonin, but at the same time, we have a lifestyle that keeps us from producing serotonin. So the modern lifestyle has a high use of serotonin and a low production of serotonin in the human body. So we're getting to states where people, they just use up all of their serotonin. And what happens when that reserve of serotonin, what happens when they use it up? You don't have the physical basis to feel pleasure. And so even if the objects of pleasure are still present, the feeling is no longer there because the foundation is missing. So let's remember, this is very similar to karma in this sense. It's not that when I go and I induce myself into something that brings pleasure, whatever it is, like eating chocolate or drinking something, or just do anything of the pleasure, the senses, and there's nothing wrong with that. But remember, when we're experiencing sensory pleasures, we're using up a substance, this hormone of the serotonin. But we need to keep producing it, because if I keep using it up without producing it, then it's just going to finish. And so to produce it, I need to sleep well according to certain times, in total darkness, because a precursor of serotonin is melatonin. So the quantity of melatonin that I produce at night is the basis to be able to produce serotonin during the day. So if I sleep at wrong times of night, or if I keep the lights on late at night, or through the night, then I'm not able to produce enough melatonin. So in this our modern lifestyle is influencing really negatively all of this. So this is a chemical response. Many people who are depressed is a result of this chemical imbalance, because they don't have this physical basis to sustain these states of happiness. They don't have this serotonin. So when I spend money, we shouldn't, there's nothing wrong with feeling pleasures, but we should try to produce as much as we use up. And if we look at our modern lifestyle, if you just compare it to 30 years ago, we just induce so many pleasures. I mean, even look at the way we eat every day. It's Christmas, There's, it's not that like, oh, that day is a special day to eat this. No, every day you can eat what you want. So my point is that when I experience a sensory pleasure, I'm not just using up the material resources to get that pleasure, that condition through which I'm experiencing the pleasure. I'm also using up my inner reserves, in this case, let's say the serotonin, that allow me to experience that pleasure. And karmically speaking, it's the same. When I experience the pleasure, I have the karmic causes to experience that pleasure, and there's nothing wrong or negative in experiencing positive positive causes. The problem is when we just use them up without producing more. So it's important to have a lifestyle where we use up and we produce. And the idea is to produce more than we use up. I mean, this would be the right balance. So, at the basis of all this, there's an awareness, a way of looking at reality, a part of the paradigm where there's self responsibility. I live the results of my own actions, and if I want to be well, I need to perform actions that support that. If I want to avoid suffering, I need to avoid the causes that generate suffering and eliminate those that I've already created. You get it? It seems that it seems clear why we should purify our negative karma. Another reason why we should purify is because that purification is a process also of seeing our actions and redirecting our actions. So if we do a purification practice, for example, it's not just about eliminating negative karma. It's also about looking at our choices, looking at our lifestyle, and redirecting. This is fundamental because we're made of habits. So when we repeat the same things, we're reinforcing them. And once I see that something's not going well, I say, okay, stop, let's redirection it, and gradually I change that habit. So we purify not only to purify the negative karma, but also to change our habits and our mental defilements. How do we purify? To purify, we need 4 conditions that are called topshi, the 4 forces of purification. Independently, whether, if it's a practice, the sutra, tantra, or if it's through mantra or through prostrations, whatever the practice is, for it to work, it needs to have these 4 powers. If these 4 powers are not present, then it doesn't have the ability to purify. Let's see. The first one, Tengitop. Tengitop is the power of the basis, and it's generating an inner attitude, a motivation opposed to what we had when we actually performed that negative act. So let's say we want to purify a specific action. With hate, I acted with violence towards this person. And I don't want to bring the weight of that action with me. I don't want to bring that karmic force that action created. So the first thing we need to do is to generate towards that person a feeling opposed an opposing feeling.
Ho dato uno schiaffo,
So one thing,
un pugno,
one
non ha
thing,
funzionato, non avrei dovuto dar lo schiaffo.
one thing is saying, okay, I slapped someone and I got punched in the face. I shouldn't have slapped that person. No. So
Dobbiamo prima di tutto generare
we
uno stato emotivo opposto.
before
Ho avuto un sentimento
admitting
di
that it
odio
was an
verso
error,
qualcuno, per poter purificare le azioni che ho compiuto con odio,
to
io devo
purify.
generare un sentimento di compassione.
So if I had feelings of hate, I need to first of all generate the opposite feelings towards that person, that same person. So feelings of love and compassion. So I need to invert that feeling.
E già qua vediamo che non è così ovvio.
And there you can see already that it's not so obvious. Because
Ho litigato con qualcuno,
if I fought with someone,
ho parlato in un modo
I
violento,
spoke in a violent way, I did a negative action, I acted with violence, aggression, etc., etc. Okay, I say, okay, I do, I'll recite 21 Vajrasattvas, 100 Vajrasattvas, it's done. No. Vajrasattva is the mantra of purification. Maybe you do, you do 100 of them, but you're thinking about something else. Okay, I only did 20 and I didn't do 21, so I didn't purify. No, it's not. It's not about, getting points. At the basis, we need that first power. It's the basis, the foundation, the support, it's the floor, it's the table. I mean, it's the support of purification. Is an inner attitude that is opposite to the attitude we had when we did that action. Is that clear? So, at the basis, to be able to purify, and given also that we can't remember all the stupid things we do, but this is easy, because at the basis of all non-virtuous actions, there are some feelings. There's selfishness, anger, hate, jealousy, envy, that come from selfishness and ignorance, fundamentally. This grasping at intrinsic existence, grasping at this objective existence when reality is subjective. So at the basis, to be able to purify, the most important thing at the basis is a sincere feeling of altruism, love and compassion towards others. This is one of the first necessary things that we need to generate to be able to purify, because most of our non-virtuous actions, they come from selfishness, this obsession with self-gratification, indifference towards the suffering of others, and hate and anger, etc. This is indifference towards others. This comes from our own ignorance. So to be able to purify at the basis, we need a feeling of love and compassion. This is the basis. And here we see that, we wanted, we wanted to find a purification practice where I could just read the booklet three times a day and it'd be fine. That would be really easy, huh? And maybe I'm just made like a little bit like this, but there's some places in Asia, for example, there's some holy places with, not to take anything away from the qualities of these places, but there's some places that say there's like a little cave, and it says if you go through this cave, you'll purify the karma of hundreds of thousands of years. But if I don't have the basis of love, if I don't have these 4 powers, so going through would be the 4th power. Now we had 3 from before. It's just not going to work. according to what I've learned, what I think. Of course, there are holy places with many, many qualities. There's no doubt about that. But we need to be very careful to not fall into a kind of, how can I say, we take away our own responsibility and put it on the shoulders of something or someone else. Like in Tibet, it says like, drink this holy water and it's going to purify your negative karma. I mean, you can drink hundreds of liters. This makes me remember one, just a little quick parentheses. We were in Beijing together with Lama Ganchen, and we had gone to a marvelous temple. It's called the Lama Temple. Ganden Chinchelin. It's in the center of Beijing. There's a statue of Buddha Maitreya made of sandalwood. It's 100 meters tall. It's enormous. There's also a beautiful special statue of Lama Tsongkhapa. It's a very special place. It's a very holy place, and every time he'd go to Beijing, following the indications of his guru, the 10th Panchen Lama, he would go first there. So we were there with him, and as it happened often with Lama Ganchen, we were received by the abbot of this temple, and who usually come from Mongolia. And there was this old monk who was very happy that we were there. We were about 30 Westerners there. And at a certain point he said, I want to give you something very precious that I have. I have this holy water. And everybody said, thank you, thank you. And he sends his disciple to get this very special vase, and it was a long story about this blessed water. So he came with this container. He opens it, and inside there was like so much mold. And this monk was, the monk was about 90, and look, the water was older than he was. And so we were receiving this water, I mean, that we were supposed to drink, but it really smelled like sewage water. It really made you nauseous. And some people, with the strength of faith, they drank it without even wincing. I didn't drink it. Out of respect, to not throw it away. And then I didn't throw it away, but I just put it on my head. But then I stayed with the smell all day long. So what I mean to say is that I have no doubt that some objects have their power, they're blessed, no doubt. Water is one of those, has a special quality, but to purify, it's not enough, that condition, that tool. You need also the attitude of the one who wants to purify. And the basis, as is explained in all the Lamrim texts, is Denitop, is this basis of the power of the basis. And since we don't remember everything we've done, and we're simple beings, and if we take all the negative actions that we've done since beginning this time, they all come from selfishness and ignorance. So if we generate a feeling of altruism and love and compassion at the basis, we're creating a solid basis to be able to purify. So all purification practices begin with the generation of the refuge and bodhicitta. So when you have an attitude of love, compassion, and altruism to help others, you are creating this basis. It's also said that negative actions can be done towards two kinds, two objects, two, let's say, in two directions, to holy beings and sentient beings. And to purify the negative actions towards sentient beings, we need to generate love and compassion at the basis and altruism. And to purify negative actions that were done towards holy beings, we need to generate gratitude, respect, and humbleness at the basis, and refuge. This is the basis for purifying. But in a simple way, it's about generating positive feelings of love and respect, where we don't exclude others, but we want the well-being of others, independently of who they are. And if we want to purify a negative action towards a person, and specifically, we need to generate a state of mind that is opposite to the feeling we had when we did that negative action towards that person. So this is the first power. Unfortunately, it's not enough just to recite the refuge prayer, Sangye Chudan Soge Chunam La, okay, I've taken refuge, I'm done. So, if we want to give it a little bit more emphasis, then we recite the four immeasurables. Simchen Tamche, I'm so hungry. No, okay. The words of the prayers are important to direct our mind. So when we generate bodhicitta, or the parts of lojong, we familiarize ourselves with altruism and love. It's not just important in our daily life to eliminate the root of our suffering, which is selfishness, but also to help us eliminate our negative karma so that we can purify. So again, let's see again how important generating bodhicitta is. Even also to eliminate our negative karma. So once again, egotistically speaking, it's smarter to be altruistic, because if we don't have this basis, we won't be able to purify our past negative karma. So the basis of purification is this virtuous feeling opposed to the feeling we had when we did the negative action. I think it's very clear. The second power of purification, to purify, once I have this basis, I need to do what is called Sungi Jippo, which is to recognize openly that it was a mistake. So it's regret. But often when we use the word regret, we connect it with a feeling of blame or guilt, which is strange, because I feel like this feeling of guilt, it's almost like saying, okay, I did this thing, it was wrong, I feel guilty, I give myself a punishment, and now I'm free to do it again. No, it's not about feeling guilty, but a feeling self-responsible. I mean, I want to grow. I want to be a positive interdependence. And I recognize that acting as I did creates a negative interdependence for myself and for the world around me. So without hiding anything to anyone, I recognize that I did something wrong. So the second power is about openly admitting our mistake. And without justifying, there's no, it's not necessary. I mean, it's really beautiful to openly admit our mistakes, but I see that it's difficult for most. Often we have this enormous tendency to blame and justify and victimize. So if I say, okay, like this action's not right, I don't need to explain why I did it. Okay, this is an example, an easy example. So you shouldn't separate the garbage like this. So, when you recycle, you shouldn't mix, everything together. You need to separate, the plastic here and the paper there and glass here. And if I realize that I did it wrong, I don't need to say, oh, but I did it because someone told me and I didn't know. No, you don't need to justify, why. Simply say, okay, I understand now. And now I take the commitment, which is that third power of purification. Take the commitment to not do it again. I did it wrong. I take the commitment to not repeat that. And then I do something to remedy that, which is the fourth. So the first is the basis, is the opposite attitude. And then the second is to openly admit. So we should remedy that, and then we take the commitment to not repeat it. These are the four powers. If I speak to you in a certain way, for example, let's say I was aggressive or in a way that generated conflict, I recognize that it's not right. What was my feeling at the basis of that? Oh, because I was angry. I was feeling arrogant. And so I induce an opposite attitude of respect. I see your necessities. I generate love towards you. And with that attitude, I say, okay, the way I spoke to you was not kind, it was not right. It generated a negative interdependence between us. And at that point, I can generate a positive attitude. I do something, a positive action that will be in opposition to what I did. And so, or an attitude based on kindness or generosity, and I'm going to do something positive to oppose that negative action. And that last power is the commitment to not repeat it. I take the commitment to not speak like that, to speak like that anymore. So I saw that I spoke with aggression. I generate the opposite feeling. But if I'm still trapped in that feeling of hate, then I won't be able to recognize that it was wrong. Maybe conceptually I could say, okay, yes, morally it was wrong, but did you see what you did to me? So what happens there? We're justifying that action. And when we try to openly admit an error, if we justify it, then you can see we don't have the basis of the purification, that first power. So first of all, I need to generate an opposite attitude. I spoke to you based on my anger and my so now I allow myself to see you, and and based on that, I recognize that it's generated suffering to you and to myself and to others, and it's a condition of suffering for others and a cause of suffering for myself, and so it should be avoided. I need I've generated a negative interdependence. So then I try to do something. I do something towards you. I come to you in a positive way. I ask I say, I apologize. I act with generosity or kindness. And then the fourth power, I take a commitment to not repeat that kind of action again. These are the four powers of purification. It's not so complicated, but it requires a deep sincerity with ourselves. What happens if in our daily lives what would happen if we dedicated some time in our daily lives, in the morning, or it's easier in the evening, some time where we could look back at what we did during the day. What were my actions, my mental, physical, verbal actions, of the day that weren't so positive? And if in those moments I allow myself to generate opposite feelings, just to openly admit that what I did should not be repeated because it's not positive, it's not working. I recognize it's not good. I mean, naturally, that takes me to that fourth power, this commitment to not repeat that action. And in the meantime, I'm generating an opposing force, opposing towards the action that I actually did. So when I recognize that it was negative, and I react by doing something opposite, it's as if the one it's like a strength that's going to eliminate another strength. It's like what we said at the beginning. Any force that's generated, it stays there until it comes into contact with something else. The example that we gave before was like throwing the stick, If I throw it, after a while, maybe it falls because it comes into contact with, the force of gravity. But if it didn't come into contact with any other force, it would just keep going. Similarly, if I generate an action, I do an action, when I openly admit that it was an error, it's as if I'm directing, and then with that opposing attitude is the strength that goes against it. And at that point, I can do something positive. So it's a positive force that is going to act against this negative force. And in purification, there are different possibilities. With a practice of purification, it's possible to diminish the negative karmic force. It's possible to eliminate it completely, or just make it into many fragments, many small pieces. Imagine an enormous boulder that becomes to many smaller stones. So it might take longer to or you can also just make sure that you've blocked the growing of the karma. So you just make sure that it stays, it doesn't get any bigger. That's also another possibility. So daily, when we do in the 7 limbs, when we do the purification practices, we should dedicate a moment in our day where we observe ourselves, we observe our actions. It's important to do this. That it shouldn't be something generalized. Oh, I purify all negative actions of body, speech, and mind. Better than nothing, but it's important to observe what's happened in this last day. How did I act? What were my thoughts? Which thoughts that were not positive? What habits that I have that are generating negative interdependence? Maybe we're all saints and we don't have and if we don't have any negative actions, better for us. But what happens is that the farther along the path we go, the smaller the things come up. It's like if a signal is very distorted, you don't notice the frequencies that are dirty, that are not the small frequencies that are not clean. It's like if the room is very, very dirty, you don't notice the dust, no? But once you've cleaned the room, then you can really notice the fine dust. So similarly, as we go further along the path, the more we're able to have more balanced, coherent conduct, etc. The more we'll be able to see the dirt, let's say, because we start by purifying we start by purifying the actions of the body, the things we do physically, physical aggression or a wrong or sexual misconduct or killing, and then we go on to the actions of speech, lying, idle gossip, just talking. Normally when we're talking about, more or less, what are the objects of conversation when we're just this idle chatter? Are we rejoicing? Are we rejoicing for the qualities of others? Like, oh, did you see how generous and beautiful this person is? Is that what we're talking about? Or normally, are we talking about our objects of attraction and aversion? We're highlighting negative aspects of one or the qualities of our objects of attraction. So normally, when we're just talking, like meaningless chatter or idle gossip, it's said that it's one of the weakest negative actions, but since it's the one we do the most over time, and it creates a lot of attraction and aversion, and so it's karmically it's very heavy. So once I have control over my body, then I move on to have control over my speech. And once I have control over my speech, then I move to have control over my mind, not just my thoughts, but my emotions. I recognize I'm attached to my image. I recognize that I criticize based on arrogance. I recognize anger or jealousy or envy. I start to see the subtleties of all of this, and this is what I need to openly admit and purify. And so the act of purifying daily is where every day we take, we see that we've gone off the tracks a little bit, and I put myself back on the tracks. I recognize what's not going well, and I put myself back on the right direction. I think that it's quite clear. Now, do we need to do the purification practices or not? Nobody can do it for us. And one of the most important things of the purification practice is about redirectioning our actions. Once we can do this daily, this takes us to redirect ourselves daily, in our physical, for all of our actions of body, speech, and mind. Remember that there's no hurry to get to where we need to get, but there's a hurry to stay on the path. And the last of the 7 limbs is rejoicing. So we recognize what is not going well, we redirect, and we recognize that what we do that is good, and we're happy about it. In our way of acting physically, verbally, and mentally. In other words, it's a constant training to reinforce our good habits, and in diminishing and constant training in diminishing our negative habits. This is also what the purification practices are about. We need to be careful to not fall into this trap that exists, where we do purification practices, connecting this purification only with the tool itself, to the mantra, the visualization, etc., and not use the purification practice, to not use it as a tool to look at one's own habits and actions, because if I recognize I do something negative, and then I spend 5 days reciting Vajrasattva mantras, and I feel like I've purified, and then I think, oh well, I can just do that again because I know how to purify with Vajrasattva. No, a fundamental point to be able to do purification practice as well is about we need to stop victimizing ourselves and stop justifying our actions, our negative actions. Something that I realized, that one difficulty we have, a difficulty into not victimizing ourselves or not justifying. So when something doesn't go well, rarely it's someone, when I see something doesn't go well, rarely is it anybody's fault. And when it is someone's fault, I see that it's very difficult for that person not to justify himself. For once, it's kind of a caricature, but once I came back from a trip, I think I was in Tibet, and I come back home, and there was only one person home. I come back, okay, I go to the bathroom, and the toilet was blocked. I call a plumber, a friend of ours. He came. It was like Saturday or Sunday, I don't remember. He came home, and then he takes apart the toilet, and in the tube there were 2 or 3, I don't remember, the watermelon peels. They've been there for a while, and he says, "What do you do?" I mean, and then I said, it wasn't me. And he said, no, everyone always tells me it's not their fault. You can, everyone always tells me that it wasn't them. Even when people live alone, they tell me that it wasn't their fault. But in this case, really, it wasn't me. Then I went to the only person that was in the house. I said, Did you have any watermelon these days? No, I didn't have any watermelon. Did someone come to the house who ate watermelon? I asked. No, it's, you see that the watermelon just appeared at the toilet, some kind of spirit that eats watermelon. But it's not. But it's not about spirits or anything like that. It's about the inability to just admit a mistake. As if you hide behind, as if hiding behind a finger, you're no longer there. I don't know if you've ever tried to hide yourself behind a finger. It seems like at a certain point you can you can you feel like you've blocked yourself behind a finger. But when we do something wrong, the first thing that we should do is just to openly admit that we've made a mistake. How can I remedy this? What can I do? And it's beautiful to be able to do it. It requires maturity, and without blame. I mean, when I make a mistake and I recognize it, I should openly admit it, and I don't need to justify it. Yes, but I didn't know. I didn't know that the watermelon would have blocked the toilet. Well, of course you didn't, because I'm sure you wouldn't have done it. I'm not saying that you intentionally put watermelon rind in the toilet. I'm just trying to understand what happened so that we can avoid it in the future. But from my experience, that unfortunately, often when we highlight something that doesn't go well, and the person is the person who did it comes forward or is named, there's this strong tendency to want to justify. Okay, yes, I did it, but when we talk about purification practices, we should never, we never judge the person, but we're judging the actions, not the person. Never in the purification practice do we say, "Oh, I need to purify because I'm a bad person, I'm a horrible person." No, we never say, "I need to purify because I'm a negative, bad person." No, I need to purify. No, I'm not a bad person. I'm a person who does good things and bad things, but I don't want to do the bad things anymore, so I need to redirect those. So we don't judge the person, but we're judging the actions. And when we do this, starting with ourselves, even on a practical daily life, when we recognize that we've done something that isn't good, first we openly admit it. We welcome ourselves. We recognize, that we did something that was negative. But what can I do to remedy it so that I don't repeat it? But without justifying. Because when we justify ourselves, it means, okay, it's not my fault. I don't have responsibility. Oh, if I did this, it's because this one said this and that one said that. No, but, I'm not telling you this to punish you. I'm telling you this because so that you're aware that it didn't, you're aware that it didn't go well, and so that you don't repeat it anymore. There's a good example. A few days ago, or no, a few weeks ago, there was a fire puja. Drupcha Rinpoche did a fire puja with the best of intentions under so under so okay, yeah. During the fire puja, some wood was actually put, and it wasn't wood for burning, and it was difficult because you need to constantly put some water so that it wouldn't burn. And so in a situation like this, people want to say, like, who did it? And then this person went to Geshe-la and said, say like, oh, we need to tell this person not to do it. And he instead answered with a proverb, which is seeing the negative results of your actions. Seeing the negative results of your actions talks much louder than any kind of advice. So certainly the person that was there must have surely seen that what he did didn't work. So also from our side, when we see something that doesn't go well, we have this tendency that we want to blame the person and say, you made a mistake, you need to suffer. Instead, no. You made a mistake. Okay, I see you, and I'm gonna try to help you, see the situation, and give you the support so that you learn and you don't repeat that situation. Because it's the action that should be judged and not the person. It doesn't matter who did it. It's clear for everyone that shouldn't be done like that. So in our daily life, let's remember as well that these small daily lives, our small daily activities reflect our spiritual path as well. So if daily we have this tendency to become defensive and justify or blame others, this is going to reflect also in more important things as well. And here we have amazing keys to live better. And one is to not victimize ourselves and not blame ourselves, but welcome and be kind with ourselves, and let's direct ourselves towards what we want to be, where we want to go. We don't justify our actions, but take the commitment to act differently. Okay, this didn't go well. Okay, but I take the commitment to not repeat it. Let's move forward. And then there's something. Has it ever happened that you've done something stupid? You know you shouldn't do it, but you can't. You don't have the courage to take the commitment to not repeat it because you know you won't be able to maintain that commitment. What are we supposed to do then? For example, I've seen an attitude where people say, okay, given that I know that I'm going to repeat that action, I'm not going to take the commitment to not repeat it, because if I take the commitment to not repeat it, and then I break it, then I've committed two negative actions. So I'm just going to enjoy doing that thing. No, but in this case, even if I know because of my weakness, because often that poison has a good taste, I still need to see that poison as poison and try to not take it anymore. And then if I fall, then I need to take the commitment again, because every time we fall, if there's a more time, so we want to fall down more often and with doing less damage to ourselves, because if I do something, after I wait 5 months in between, then I forget, and then it's a bad fall. But, it's important to take that commitment, to that mind that says that you recognize it as negative and a commitment to not do it again. And then we also ask the help of Guru Buddha, please help me have the strength to not repeat this action. Because instead, if we say, oh, well, okay, anyway, I know that it's not good, but it's a habit that I have, and we justify it. Oh, but it's not even that bad, like given everything that's going on in the world, this little lie here, you know, or maybe acting a little arrogantly here. That's nothing compared to what goes on in the world, you know. We shouldn't be comparing ourselves with others, because we, if we if we use the negative actions of others to judge or to judge our actions, then that's just not going to work. I mean, our reference point should be who we want to become. So if people are acting with hate and anger, that doesn't justify negative behavior on my side. You know, maybe it would be better to highlight what I don't want to become. That would be better. And so the practice of purification has this constant function. That's why it should be repeated constantly. This constant function to redirect ourselves, and also for, you know, to develop more self-awareness, self-awareness of our own thoughts and our conduct. We don't take for granted the way we do things. We should observe our intentions and observe our feelings. It's really important. So it's something fundamental if we want to make our life meaningful and grow. We're not here to point our finger at anyone. I mean, some stupid things we do every once in a while, some kind of habit based on attachment, jealousy, or anger or obsession with our self-gratification. We have, you know, feelings of anger, etc. We have these. It's not that we're able to live in a constant, positive, and virtuous interdependence. So it's important to take ourselves in our own arms and redirect ourselves. But we need to take away the stigma of blame from the practices of purification, because it's not through punishment or blame or guilt. You know, because in our society it's like this: you made a mistake, you need to suffer, you're bad. I mean, I remember sometimes I saw parents talking to kids, and I think, my goodness, what poor kids. I don't remember what this child had done. Maybe he did something small. I don't remember what it was. And the mother, the father are both, you're bad. I mean, no, it's, you know, being the term, you're evil, they were saying. No, being evil is something very different, you know. And because you're like this, you need to be punished. In our society, when you do something wrong, for example, killing someone, the person who acts with violence, who does that negative act, is that person punished, or is that person helped? What happens in our society? What's the attitude? I mean, that is punishment. And there's this strange thing that if someone did something wrong to me, and then that person is punished, then I feel better. Instead, one thing is one thing, another thing is another thing. We shouldn't punish anyone, or we should, at least of ourselves. If someone does something that generates a negative interdependence, does something based on aggression, or something negative, that person should not be punished. That person should be redirected and helped so that he doesn't repeat that action. Because if I act negatively, or in a way that's negative, it's because I don't have the tools to act differently in that moment. So I need to be helped. And the same thing we can say for ourselves. But our tendency that when we see someone that we you know, when we see someone make a mistake, I mean, what's our tendency? Do we want to take that person in our arms, or do we want to blame and punish that person? Unfortunately, it's the second. So we need to invert, to take away this attitude. And if there's an attitude that generates suffering, it's that attitude that needs to be eliminated. And that person should be welcome, should be taken care of and helped, so that that person can learn to do differently, you know. And we're not talking about punishment. Getting back to us, to purify, it's important for us to take ourselves in our own arms and not judge us, but judge our actions and redirect ourselves and look to the best version of ourselves, the person I want to be, because I want to grow and I want to be a positive interdependence in the society that I live in. So I need to counteract these negative karmic actions of my past. So with this, we conclude this introduction of what we mean by purifying, why we should purify, and what the basis of purification is. These 4 powers. So the power of the basis is opposite the mind, the power of opposition, so openly admit that it was a mistake, and then we have the power of not wanting to repeat that action, is often cited as the 4th power. And then there's the power of doing, the power of the antidote, as doing something something to oppose that negative action. I do something positive in opposition to the negative one. So it's not enough to say, oh, I made a mistake. No, I need to do something and take that commitment to not repeat it again. I don't know if it's happened that you've seen someone or yourself. So, you know, maybe someone says, oh, I made a mistake, but doesn't offer himself to help the situation or the damage that was created, and then that person ends up doing the same thing again and again. I mean, have you ever seen something like this in others or with yourselves? In that case, that habit just is reinforced and just gets repeated. Instead, I do something wrong. I spoke with violence, or I wrote something, with violence. I openly admit that it was wrong. I do something to oppose that. I apologize. I mean, you don't always have to apologize to purify, but you're doing something to oppose that action. And independently of whether the person accepts your apology or not, you yourself, you recognize that it was a mistake and you openly admit it. And you try to do something to resolve the problems that you've created. Or I've done something that have generated conflict. I try to pacify it. I do something. I do a positive action towards something. I send flowers, or I do a positive action to to counteract the negative one. It's not enough just to ask for, to apologize. And then I take a deep commitment with myself to not repeat that action. I tell myself I need to be careful. And like this, we change our habits. Just going to repeat one more time. Without feelings of guilt. You don't need to point a finger at anyone or at yourself. We're all here we're all in the same boat of samsara with our own ignorance. The point here, there's nothing wrong with making a mistake, but we should be very careful about not perpetuating the same mistakes. When we see that a situation or an attitude, we see an attitude is not positive, then we need to see it and redirect. And it's difficult to resolve from one day to the next because there's so many other emotions and minds, the mental defilements that are attached with it, little by little. So now we're going to stop for lunch, and then at 3:30 we'll come back to look at the purification practices.
Sashi peke chukshi meto chamari rabling sheni de gemba de sange shinto mikte ulwargi drogo namda shingla chepra shwa chetsun lame kutse rabten chi namkara chinle chokchur gepa dang losan tempe dreme sasumgi drove munsel tautu ne gyuru chi yedam Guru Ratna Mandrala Kam Niryata Yami Kewa Kuntu Yanda Lama Dan Rame Cheki Pela Long Chin Sadan Lam Dorje Changi Kopa Nyurtub Sho Nimo Dele Tsendele Nime Kuyan Delekshi Ninsen Taktu Delekpe Kuncho Sumke Jinge Lob Kuncho Sumke Ngodrubutsol Kuncho sumke trashi shu. Bala me sangye rinpoche, kyo bala me tamche rinpoche, drimbala me gendo rinpoche, kyamne kuncho sumla chopa, locho sampo pagyu trashi pa, tuche tembe chinle yarngo da pege drolo zambeze, panden la me shela chopa pu. Buon appetito.
Have a good lunch, and thank you, everyone.